Hi engineers, welcome to another year at school. Today we're going to start with a unit on rocketry. Rockets, why? Well, first of all, I'm an aerospace engineer, so I know how to make rockets go. But it illustrates an important principle, one of Newton's laws, and we're going to do that right now. In order for a rocket to work, there must be some force pushing the rocket forward. And it's going to push forward in the combustion chamber. Rocket fuel will combine with oxygen and burn in here and create tremendous pressure. Now, when it does, the pressure will be balanced wherever there's walls on equal and opposite sides. But over here, this forward pressure doesn't have anywhere to go because the rocket has a place for the gases to escape. So the combustion chamber is where the pressure builds. The throat is the narrowing, and that speeds the gases up. And then this thing that people call the nozzle, if you want to sound like you're really an aerospace engineer, we call that the bell. Looks kind of like a bell. The shape of the bell will control the plume of gases coming out. At different places in the atmosphere, the pressure lowers, so this plume will spread out as rockets go up. If you've ever seen a rocket launch, at the very beginning, the rocket plume is quite narrow like this. But when you look after a couple of minutes of flying, the plume looks like it's expanding like this, and it has, and that's because the pressure is lower, so the gases spread out. The more the gases spread out, the less efficient the rocket, because instead of going straight out, it's going off to the side like this instead of straight out to the back. So this is why we have one shape of bell for altitude air work, low altitude work, and we'll have another shape of bell for up in the space, because we want to tighten that plume up in outer space. And you can see that whenever you watch, say, a SpaceX launch, and they have the second stage where you can actually see it ignite and start glowing. And that bell is very tight to control the plume in outer space. So here are the three biggies. The combustion chamber, the throat, looks like a throat, narrows, and the bell, because it looks like a bell. I've told you, we engineers, we're not very good with the English language, so we just use words that are close. Now I've got an example of a rocket right here. A balloon, you'll see it. Right now, this is the combustion chamber. And all the pressure is equal because I have the throat pinched off. When I let it go, the throat will accelerate the airflow out, and there'll be only pressure on the front of the combustion chamber, and the bell will let the air out. It won't be a very good bell. It'll flop every which way. Let's see what happens. It went out this way and then came back, and that's because the throat and the bell are not solid, and they're flopping about, changing the vector every which way. But it's still a combustion chamber, a throat, and a bell. So what can we do to make it a little bit better? Well, we could use some tape and tape a straw to it. Well, that won't do any good. Now you can try this at home, just with a straw tape, and a balloon. Let's see what happens when we let this go. It curved in the shape on the side of the straw. And did you see how it was more stable? It was because the straw added weight on one side, and this thing flopping could not overcome all of the weight of the straw. This was used in old rockets like the Congreve rockets. Believe it or not, you know what the Congreve rocket is. You ever heard, "And the rocket's red glare"? Those are the old rockets that the British would fire. They literally look like this with a long, about 10 or 12-foot stick on it. And these things would ignite, and this stick would act as a counterweight to the thrust and help keep the rocket going on its path like that. They're actually not very accurate, but very scary. So the fact that Fort McHenry could put up with the Congreve rocket like this, and we just made a kind of Congreve rocket with our straw attached to the balloon, and you can see that it didn't flop every which way, it came in a curved path. We just made the first attempt to control our rocket's path. Now we're going to try another attempt, and this time we're going to take a string and thread it through the straw. And then we should be able to shoot the balloon down the string if we can get it firm enough. And if you'll hold on just a second, I'll try to get somebody to hold the other side of the string. Give me just a moment. I need a volunteer. Yes, would you like to come in and help me? What I need is for somebody to hold this string. You wanna? Okay, just hold this over by the door. And what I'm going to do is try to blow up this balloon. Daniel, I want you to come and take this piece of tape that I've got right here and tape the balloon onto, right here, see? Tape the balloon onto this straw, right in the middle there. Not quite there. So you need it on both sides. Right in the middle. Put it on the straw first. On the straw first. And then get it on both sides. We'll see how that goes, and we'll step off to the side. Get a new piece. Okay, there you go. Put it right in the middle of the straw so it goes on both sides. There you go. Now we'll hold this steady, step aside. You can even control the camera if you could, please. Okay? Ready, set, straight down. Our first attempt at controlling the flight of a rocket. Now, it's unusual to just launch on a string, isn't it? Not really. We have rockets that do that all the time. They use them in movies to shoot spears that are being thrown along a thin wire, so it looks like somebody has thrown it and it slides along the string, and then they can edit out all the other stuff like the string, the wire, even the rocket, so it looks like it's actually been thrown. They did that on a movie once about the Wild West, where somebody was throwing a spear and it whizzed past a guy. It was never going to hit him. It was on a string. And that way they controlled it for movies. All right? So the string, thank you all for your help. The string and the straw are now our first form of controlling a rocket. And what I'm going to have you all do is make something called a sprocket. That is a rocket. I've used a piece of paper here. It's kind of shaped like a cone. And I'm going to put it on our straw that we've used. And then we can shoot it just by blowing our breath. Now notice it went right off of this. I'll give it another shot here. Farther, but what happens as this straw flies, it begins to tumble. That's because of the wind hitting off the front. I've made it like a cone to try to stabilize it, and that worked for a while, but eventually the force on the front flops it over and it falls to the ground. So what I want you to do for homework is to think how, if you can make a sprocket, just literally a piece of paper rolled around a pencil. Just take something like this, wrap a piece of paper, tape it, and crimp it, and you will have a good unguided rocket. But what could you do to make it go where you want it to go? Any ideas? Fins. Exactly right. I know you were thinking fins. So you can do the balloon test, shooting it down a string at home if you wish. And then you can take your straw and put a rocket around it. Just crimp the ends off like that. And then you can attach with tape some fins. And this will stabilize the rocket. It won't go as far, but it will be much steadier in flight. So, for your assignment tonight, build a sprocket. You can even put sprocket in an internet search and find lessons on sprocket. They actually have them. And then put on fins. And you'll be able to test how stable your sprocket is flying off your straw compared to without one. Everybody goes, that's a little silly. Not really. This is what gave Robert Goddard so much trouble in his rocket experiments in the 1920s. He was trying to make a liquid-fueled rocket. And he was having trouble because the tanks that had the fuel and the oxygen in them, he was trying to line up, and he didn't know if he ought to put the combustion chamber, the throat, and the bell underneath. And how do we ignite them? And this long, thin tube, he was having trouble enclosing it into anything, so he left it open. And what was happening was everything was just flipping like this. Okay? So he was having trouble because he didn't have any fins on, and that's when he realized that there needs to be some control in the atmosphere. Okay? So you can try your sprocket with and without fins and see what is going on with Robert Goddard's productions in the 1920s. All right? So I want to thank you for this. This will just start us off, and later on we'll get more done. All right? If you will please, straw. I use paper. Some people have tried aluminum foil. I think that's a little bit heavy. Okay? You can even try the balloon. What could you do to make a balloon better? I wonder if you could cut off part of the straw and make it a better throat and bell. Maybe you could attach it like this so that the exhaust all comes out from one end of a straw or a piece of a straw. Okay? Maybe you could cut off part of the straw and just tape it around there to try to make a better throat and bell. You can always tape it to this thing and try maybe 2 or 3. I've had people try 3 straws around this, and then they'll have a little fin system that connects the straws, kind of like this. Here's the balloon, straw, 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 and they'll connect it with paper to try to make a little fin system like this. See that? So that is very possible. That'll make it look better. This will give you an idea of unguided, unstable flight with a balloon, with unguided but stable flight with a sprocket with fins. And you're going to see how the development of rocket science came along with this first idea of how do I control it? How do I make it go where I want to make it go? All right? You can always look up Robert Goddard, G-O-D-D-A-R-D. He is the grandfather of rocketry, but he was ridiculed in his time, even to the point where the New York Times said, rockets are pushing against a vacuum, and you can't push against something that isn't there. He ought to know that. He knew that the force is in the front of the combustion chamber, not in the back. This is the force that propels the rocket. This one right here. Not this here. It's the absence of force back here that makes this one so powerful. And the faster you push something back, the more powerful the force is in the front of the combustion chamber. And now you know how rockets really work, okay? They don't push back against anything, they push forward against the wall of the combustion chamber. Whether it's air, or soda water, or pressurized water, or match heads. There is a great video about a man who makes a match head rocket. It's on YouTube. And it only has one match head in it, but he makes his rocket look a lot like this, and he fires it off a wooden stick. And right there is the match head. One match head, and the rocket will go about 40 feet, even with a cute little plume of smoke. So you can look that up. You've got a lot to do to look this up. Welcome to the beginning of rocketry. And next time, we'll start showing how we do guidance, how we control where things go. And this will lead to the first true rocket, the V2, which was used in World War II by the Germans. All right? You've got a lot of stuff to look up, and it's a really fascinating subject. So hope to see you then. Thanks very much. Bye.